Roll call, and I know right now we need a motion to excuse the mayor. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in, roll call.
Councilmember Zillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier.
Aye.
Councilmember Sousa.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Marcano.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ward.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Okay, agenda's item for discussion. The first one is the overview of WestMEC, the West Valley's Career Technical Education Public School District, and Perry Spice will start the presentation.
Hey, good evening, Council. At the invitation of Vice Mayor Lord, I'd like to introduce you to WestMEC, the West Valley's Public School District for Career and Education. And this evening we have the Superintendent, Greg Donovan, Director of Business Partnerships and Government Relations, Diane McCarthy, and the Media Director, Chris Dick. So they'll give you a short overview of the school and be available to answer.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor Lord. It's a real pleasure for us to be here this evening. And how are you? It's so good to see you. Mr. Cavalier, good to see you too. And to give you an overview of WestMEC, Western Maricopa Education Center. We are Arizona School District number 402. And when you get beyond an elected school board and a superintendent, we are unlike almost any other school district in the state. We provide career-driven education to students in high school. And in the case of WestMEC, you can see on the map how big we are. We comprise 12 school districts, and up in the upper left-hand corner is Wickenburg. To the left, far left, is Saddle Mountain School District, Tonopah, and to the far right is Paradise Valley School District. We have 3 elementary school districts within our boundaries, and the other are either Union High School districts or unified school districts. The major school district within Goodyear is Agua Fria. And let me step back a minute and tell you that in order to be a member of WestMEC, school districts must vote to join. So every one of the school boards first said, yes, we believe that there's a value to our school district to be a member of WestMEC, and then they present it to the voters. So all of the voters in all of those school districts have voted to join WestMEC. We have a secondary property tax rate of 5 cents per $100 assessed valuation. So for an individual, that's really a very small amount to pay, but when you take a look at the square miles, as you can see, we're more than 4,200 square miles. That's a very big district, and we do generate quite a bit in property taxes. We also receive average daily membership, a portion of average daily membership from the state based on the number of hours our students are being taught in our satellite and central programs. You can see there the list of all of the school districts who belong to WestMEC. And as I say, primarily it's Agua Fria who serves the Goodyear area. I'd like to give you a little bit of background on I know you know how many schools are in Agua Fria, but we do have agriculture and agri-science that includes biological systems. A lot of work being done on DNA and plants in the high schools, which we think is quite interesting. Allied health and nursing. You have building trades, construction, tech. We have business, finance, and accounting programs. We have a culinary and hospitality. In fact, we have a large culinary program, and we think that the reason a lot of high school students like culinary is because high school kids like to eat. And this is a great way for them to eat and learn how to cook at the same time. We have drafting and architecture, education and early childhood, engineering, graphics design, information technology, law and public safety, manufacturing, marketing, and media. So we really have a huge array of programs available to the students. We have more than 2,070 students enrolled right now in these programs across Agua Fria Union High School District.
Now, Buckeye Union also is in Goodyear.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and we have part of Buckeye, but we wanted to show you the bulk of what you have here. Yes, and the superintendent of Buckeye Union lives in Goodyear. And we'd invited both the superintendents to come tonight, but they were unable to. We also, in addition to these, what we call satellite programs, because they're delivered on the high school campus, so John or Jane goes to math and science and biology at one of the schools, and then fifth and sixth period goes into one of our programs. So the student doesn't have to leave the high school to get this kind of a program delivered to them. So it really makes it very easy for the students to participate in these programs. But when you take a look at the geography and how big we are, there's no place where we could put an array of buildings where you could bus students in, where they could be there 4 hours or a day, 4 hours in the morning or 4 hours in the afternoon. We're just way too big. So what we did was a couple of years ago began looking at the opportunity to provide central campus programs. And we started with a cosmetology program in Peoria, located at the corner of 75th Avenue in Peoria, where we actually have a huge amount of young women taking cosmetology programs. So in other words, they go to their school in the morning and then come to us in the afternoon, or they come to us in the morning and go to their school in the afternoon. Cosmetology is a 1,600-hour course. Think about that, 1,600 hours. So they start, it's very long. They start before their junior year. They go through their entire junior year, the summer, their senior year, and then when they graduate are eligible to take the State Board of Cosmetology exam and become a licensed
They can do
cosmetologist.
that in the 2 years?
You can get those 1,600 hours, 4 hours a day, Mr. Cavalier. So that's intense. And think about going 4 hours to your home campus if you were out here in Agua Fria and then driving to 75th Avenue in Peoria and being there 4 hours a day. This is a commitment that these young people make.
What type of transportation do you have between that?
They provide their own.
They do?
They do provide their own. We don't have any ability within our charter to provide transportation. So the students are on their own. And all of the central campus programs that we have, we make sure are located on good transportation lines, good bus lines, in case they do have to take buses. But by and large, they drive their own cars. Yes,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely. Another central campus program that we started this fall is medium and heavy diesel technology. There's a huge need for diesel technicians. And because building a building to teach diesel technology, as you can imagine, would have to be very tall and very big. And we don't have that kind of money. So instead, we went to Freightliner over here at I-10 and 101. You all are familiar with how big that is, 72 bays over there. And we asked them if they would be willing to lease us a couple of bays and some space for a classroom. They were only too happy to do that. And so this fall, we had 19 juniors begin to learn how to be heavy diesel mechanics. And of course, they're right there on site, and the kids love it, and obviously the employees love it as well, having these young people there. Again, a 2-year program. All through their junior year, they'll have a paid internship this summer, and then their senior year. At the end of that, they will be eligible for a national certification so that they can go anywhere in the country and say, yes, I know how to work on a diesel truck. I know how to do this. It has been so successful from Freightliner's standpoint that now we have expanded the program to 4,000 square feet, and we will be doubling up on the program this coming year because there is such a need for diesel mechanics. And that's another point I want to make. What we do in these central programs is based on what the job needs are. And one of the things I want you to be thinking about are what are the job needs in Goodyear, and as we progress, how can we help you? A third program is dental assisting, and I know all of you have heard about the Communiversity in Surprise, and we went to them and said, you know, you are talking about community colleges and universities, a great new delivery method as far as higher education is concerned, but we're really your farm team. What you want is to get our kids onto this campus, do dual enrollments, and we started in October with a dental assisting program. We have 12 seniors in that program, and they will they'll go through the end of the school year, do an internship in the summer, and finish up their program by August. They will get 3.5 high school credits, and they'll get 31 community college credits. So that's halfway to their AA degree. Again, huge need in the all over the valley for dental
I'm
assistants.
sorry, quick question. When you were saying they're getting these college credits, now, is there a fee that they pay up front?
We pay the tuition.
You
for
pay
them.
the tuition?
Uh-huh.
So they have to obviously be accepted into the program. You obviously see that they
Right.
are worthy of you putting that investment in.
Right, and then there are additional costs to that program. The biggest cost in dental assisting are for 3 tests that they will take at the end, and obviously a cost on all of those. But the beauty is they'll have 3 certificates once they pass those tests. So it really is, again, an intense program, but people who really, really want to have this career. Another one, the last 2 are both related to fire. We have a fire science program at Glendale Community College and an emergency medical technician at Glendale and Estrella Mountain Community College. Again, dual enrollments for these students, again, career opportunities. So what we wanted to present to you tonight is this is what we're all about. We think it's a very exciting opportunity for young people in the West Valley. And as you can see, we're working with a variety of cities here. There's no city involvement in terms of any cost to the city at all. We just like to work with the mayor and the council for them to know that we're in their community, for them to understand that from our standpoint, we're workforce development, we're economic development, because these students have the opportunity to get good jobs once they leave. And then let's look at coming soon. We have, thank you. Coming soon, we have an aviation program teaching airframe and power plant that will be located at the Glendale Airport. We're hoping to break ground soon, and be ready to provide that program to high school students in the fall of 2011. We have been donated 6 acres of land right there on Glendale Avenue at the north end of the Glendale Air Park. So it's going to be a signature program, obviously, when we have that building built. We have been talking to Buckeye about a logistics and distribution program. There's a huge need for all of the warehouses out there. Estrella Mountain Community College has a very good program, and probably spring of next year we'll be working with Buckeye to get students into a 10-week program, and again, a certificate at the end of that. And the beautiful part is I've already met with several of the plant managers, and they say as soon as those students complete that program and get their certificate, they'll start them at $1 an hour more than anybody else because they've had this kind of training. And finally, auto collision program that we will begin next fall at Paradise Valley High School. Again, there are no auto collision programs at the high schools. And so what we, again, are trying to do is provide opportunities for these students in high school to go in a course of 2 years, get intense training, and come out of that with a job. So that's what we do, and I guess our question to you is, how can we help you? What can we do as far as Goodyear is concerned? And that's not an answer that we expect tonight, but something that we'd like to have you think about, and obviously we're willing and able and welcome the opportunity to begin looking at things that we could do in the Goodyear area.
Any questions from the council?
Just real quick, how do you market your programs?
Just by what we're doing here today.
But I mean, in the schools?
In the
I mean,
schools, yes, and why don't I let Mr. Cook talk about that? He's our director of media.
Sure. There's a variety of ways. I mean, we have collateral pieces that we hand out to the counselors, and we target parents as well. And as Diane passes out some of the materials, you're going to see the materials that you're receiving right now are more for the business and industry sector, legislatively as well. So each one of our marketing materials, you're going to see in there some kind of just quick little pull-out fact sheets, which are specifically driven towards students. So not only do we meet with students at career fairs and after-school events. We hand out, materials through commercials, and so we really try to hit different angles for these programs. And our really, Diane was talking about our farm team. Our farm team, as far as marketing specifically, is the counselors. So once they understand the programs, we give them all the information, then they start disseminating the information out to the students, and then we're just kind of their fall person to, just make sure that the information is correct.
One reason why I ask is you got some really good programs on here as how that information gets out to those students that may want to enroll in one of these type of programs. So my understanding, the counselors are the key, and they're probably most closely attuned to the students and who may be interested in various of your programs, and that's how a lot of that message gets out to them.
That's correct. We meet with the counselors once a year specifically and kind of outlay the new programs for the following year because we're always a year ahead. And after that, it's just kind of a slow drip as far as getting the information out to them, making sure that everything is still on par and everybody's on track with the programs and what we have to offer.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
And the program's in good hands.
Well, thank you very much. It's so good to see you.
Nice seeing you, too.
What's the participation capacity, would you say, between all of those different sites? I mean, how many do you really feel you're serving that? And I mean, it sounds like you said 19
My superintendent for that. He hasn't had a chance to say anything, and he's not shy.
Thank you for the question. And when you talk about maximum capacity, you noticed we've partnered in a lot of ways. So our capacity, we're not trying to build to a specific number. We're trying to build to a specific need.
Okay.
And again, in not trying to define ourselves with one campus or one location, but be able to go into each community and fill those needs, bringing programs to the community, bringing programs that make sense to that community with the students, the parents, and the local schools. So it's a little hard to define. You saw we had up there 21,000. Technically, right now, we will touch through enrollment on the home campuses, our community college partnerships, and then our own programs, about 26,000 students this school year. Our goal, of course, is to have some additional facilities. We met this morning, just as an example, and do routinely with the colleges. We met with Glendale College this morning, talking about expanding program opportunities there. So really, I hate to say that we have a specific number that we're limited to. The diesel program, as she said, we will double next year, and really our only hindrance is facility. Well, we've already had some discussions with some others. When we outgrow perhaps Freightliner, then do we open another one at one of the other facilities? So getting students and getting programs around the West Valley where they're most pertinent is really our goal. And I guess if I could add something, we hear routinely, and I think all of you will appreciate this, sometimes there's a little confusion. We don't want to confuse the fact that these students will still graduate from high school. Occasionally people think this is somehow the alternative program from days go by, and as you noticed, we emphasized over and over tonight, these are industry-certified programs where students are getting very specific skills. These aren't the old-fashioned days of past home economics and shop classes where students that they don't know what to do with get parked between the important classes. Well, maybe they can learn a little something out in shop class. Those days are gone. These are very specific programs, technology-driven. And the days of, well, Johnny doesn't read very well, so let's put him out in shop. As we mentioned, everything here this evening takes very good academic skills. We are as concerned about academic attainment as anybody else. Our students do as well or better on Ames tests because they're driven. And you heard about the commitments these students have to make. For a lot of parents, they come to us routinely. For the first time in 10 years, 11 years, my son's up every morning ready to go to school. For 10 years, I drug him out of bed every morning. He didn't like school. Now he's the first one up. Now he's the last one going to bed because all he wants to do is tell us what he learned today. You folks know those stories over and over and over. When you're doing something you like and you see an ends to the means, this is my career, this is what I want to do, everything starts to fall into place. All that algebra begins to make sense. Sometimes even history and other things that relate to these careers begins to make sense. So it's a very exciting opportunity to bring to our students through this opportunity. There are 13 joint technical districts in the state of Arizona, so we're not like an anomaly here. And many states across the country for years, they used to call them area VOTECs and county VOTECs and those kinds of things. We've just ramped it up a notch, making sure our programs have industry certifications, very specific job and career pathway opportunities as not a means to an end, but the means to a beginning of a productive citizenry tax-paying, productive citizenship by students coming out of school. You noticed over and over and over, Diane talked about this post-secondary relationship, community college credits. We have discussions with universities. The Communiversity is certainly one where students just see it as natural. I just keep on going. This is just the beginning, because we get parents sometimes that are concerned that you're dead-ending my child. I want them to go to college. Well, this is the means to the end. How are they going to get through college?
So your
Why are they going
accreditation
to college?
is legitimate. That is, it's, I shouldn't say, it's not, shouldn't use that term, but it's, well, are you under North Central accreditation?
We are not currently. We
No,
can
but I mean the
be.
community colleges are.
Oh, absolutely.
So, so when they go from this program into the community colleges and they get a community college certificate, it isn't a North Central
Absolutely.
certified.
Because we're partnering with the Maricopa Community College
That's
District
important
System.
for a lot of the people to know that that kind of certification. I used to be director of Lamson Business College years ago, way back when.
Fantastic.
And, we were still teaching shorthand, by the way. But it's important because they weren't. We were under those business school accreditation programs. And they're okay, but a lot of people assumed that they were under a program that they could transfer credits to a university, and that wasn't true. So you had to be very careful with that. But that's very good. I'm glad to hear that you moved in that direction.
So this is a very exciting time for our West Valley community, our school districts in the West Valley that have taken this opportunity at a reasonable cost. And again, I think you would all appreciate as we talk about these partnerships we're really looking out for the taxpayer as well. Why build buildings when we can go out and partner in buildings that already exist? And stretch those dollars even farther by providing more opportunities to young people. So again, we're here to say we would love to work closely with the city of Goodyear and provide more opportunities, and we're here to work with you.
Thank you so much for coming. And Diane, this happened because I heard about WestMec and I had no idea what it was. And here I'd been in office one entire term and had never heard about it. And after Diane came up to the City Hall and briefed me, I said, we just have to share this with the other council people. Because yes, we might come up with an idea where we could maybe introduce a new program. And so I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and brief us, because it was so worthwhile. And thank you.
Well, thank you for taking time for us.
So good to see you, Dick.
Thank you. Bye.
The next item is our update on our current legislative actions and activities taking place at the Maricopa Association of Governments and Regional Public Transportation Authority, and Romina Korkus will make the presentation.
Good evening. Try to make this as quick and painless as possible. I'm going to hand out this sheet here for you. I'll just take one and give it to Jim. And then before we get started, I just want to introduce Jim Norton. Jim Norton is with R&R Partners, and he is currently helping us out on the Cubs legislation, which will be later in the discussion as soon as I'm done with this first portion. So just going to have him join me here so that he doesn't have to walk up during half of the way. So tonight's discussion is in three parts, really. First, I'm going to provide a quick review of our efforts at Maricopa Association of Governments, what we did last year in 2009. And then I'm going to move quickly into the legislative arena, and I'm going to be reviewing how we currently set our legislative agenda and possible changes to that process. And then the third part, finally, we'll be discussing in some detail what's being called the Cubs Mesa Stadium bill, which Jim will be a part of that discussion, which I hope we have a good, lively discussion on that. At any point, if you have any questions or you feel you need to stop me if I'm speaking in some terms or I use some terms that you don't understand, please just stop me and, as always, ask away. Okay, in front of you, you should have an organizational chart, which I just passed out. That's currently the makeup of the MAG committee process. And the names in that organizational chart are the members with the city of Goodyear that represent us in that process. They're employees from the city that are represented for the process. My hope is that each year I come to you and I provide for you a quick review of those employees that represent the city in these committees, because we change them usually with employees' responsibilities. And then show you the success of their efforts by highlighting some of the key projects that were funded through the MAG process over the year. In the past year, we've made some key staff changes, as you are well aware, and so just to highlight a few of those, Cato Esquivel is now the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee member who used to be Jim Nichols. John Fischbach is officially the City Management Committee individual, but Mark Gaylord sits on that spot for him. And then Councilmember Osborne is the Continuum of Care Regional Council Regional Committee on Homelessness. And we have a couple of vacant spots, which is the Human Services Coordinating Committee that used to be with Rob Antoniak, so that'll be a spot that we need to fill. And then moving off of peer enhancement peer review group committee, we have no member there, and that because Cato was the immediate chair, he just finished up being chair, so he rotated off that position. So those are just some highlights there of the different committees. You'll see in a couple of minutes the projects that were funded in the past year. But before I do that, I want to talk about a little quickly the work that we've been doing throughout the year with staff and management. In the past year, we've been encouraging our MAG representatives to take leadership roles and increase participation through those leadership roles in the committee process. And so you can see from this slide up here that the individuals with the experience in this process have stepped up and targeted in some of these positions. We've worked really hard with coordinating with other cities in putting our city employees in those key positions, either as chair or vice chair. And what you have there is, I had to note that Mayor Kavanaugh just finished becoming regional council chair, so he's serving currently as immediate past chair on the executive committee, so he's rotated out of that position. Cato was the chair of the enhancement peer review group when he's also rotated out. So those were the two ones we had last year. Currently, our city manager, John Fischbach, is the chair of the Ad Hoc Elderly and Persons with Disabilities Transportation Program Committee. Councilwoman Joanne Osborne was just recently assigned vice chair of the Continuum of Care Regional Committee on Homelessness. And then David Iwanski also just became vice chair of Water Quality Advisory Committee, which I thought these were important things for you guys to see. Okay. In addition to the improvements to the actual committee representation within MAG, we've really stepped up our efforts in applying and receiving federal monies throughout the process. These are just some highlights of some major projects that we've received money for. As you know, the Park and Ride, we've received over $7 million through the process, both between the ARA funding as well as the other federal funds. Our Yuma Road, which was the Mill and Overlay project, was $800,000 from ARA funding. The Yuma Road Bridge, the design of the Yuma Road Bridge, which was awarded to us through closeout. And what closeout is usually there's at the end of the year, there's extra money that's left over either from cities that have not completed their projects, they've had to defer projects. And so we all go together and we try to get projects out there that are ready to go. And that we got $1 million for that design, which was actually quite a huge accomplishment. And then there's a number of ITS projects that we've received money for in the past year, as you can see, and then paving dirt roads in various locations, which is about $600,000. So overall, in 2009, that's about $11 million for the city of Goodyear that we've received through the process, which I thought was important to note. And so that kind of gives you an overview of what we're doing at MAG right now. That's last year's efforts. They're going to continue, this year's funding efforts are going to continue starting in this next process that we have going. All the committees are in place now, our people are in place in these committees. And so hopefully next year I can come back and give you another update on some more projects and some more efforts that we've gone through. Are there any questions on?
Questions? Comments?
Good
Nice
effort.
job.
Good efforts.
Thanks. Okay, so the second half of the discussion is going to go into the legislative update.
Really want to tell us.
I know. You were waiting for that, aren't you?
Yeah. Let's all keep our voices down this time, huh?
I'm going to quickly go through, the current legislative process that we go through. Each year, I come to you right before when session starts, and we set an annual agenda together, and the council goes through, and I list out the guiding principles, and I list out some of the issues that we're going to see in this session, and I receive feedback, and we set together a legislative agenda. Now, This year, that didn't happen for a number of reasons. One, as you know, your council agendas have been very full, and there have been other items that we need to discuss. And so once we got through about 1-2 months into session, I realized this would be a great opportunity for me to use this session as an example and to get feedback from you on how our legislative efforts are going. In the past couple of years, we've really increased our efforts at the legislature. We're directly involved and are key stakeholders in the process. This is good for us. However, it means that we must fine-tune our efforts internally so that, we're making sure that we're communicating with council effectively as I'm working down there during session. So what I'm looking for in this first part of this discussion is feedback on how we can currently set the legislative agenda, starting with these guiding principles. So what you have in front of you are the guiding principles that we normally adopt every single year right when legislature starts. And then once we go through these guiding principles, I'd like to get some feedback from council on if there's anything missing during the legislative session that you feel as if needs improvement. If there's any communication efforts or anything that you feel need improvement, to please give me some of those ideas, and I'd be happy to take those into consideration. So just quickly, I'm not going to read through every single one of these, as you guys have mostly seen these before. Basically, in front of you is the actual portion of the legislative agenda that describes what each of the guiding principles entails. And in my opinion, these principles, as drafted, are really strong enough, yet they're general enough for me to be allowed to work the legislative process effectively. They cover the range of issues that may come up, and they allow us to maneuver as needed throughout the legislative process. I'm able to discuss such issues as impact fees and immigration bills and sign bills and zoning bills and things that affect Luke Air Force Base really just by adopting these guiding principles. And so I wanted to make sure you all had the opportunity to discuss any of these guidelines, provide any feedback you felt necessary. If there's something in here that maybe you've seen in the past that you haven't had the opportunity to provide feedback on, if you think that we need to elaborate on our guiding principles as we grow as a city, these are the kinds of things I'm really looking for from council. And if you're comfortable with this set of guiding principles moving forward, then this will be kind of the base of where we set our legislative agenda for the next year.
Just real quick, an unfunded mandate, would that fall under fiscal sustainability?
Yes.
And your transportation funding, we work in concert with Avondale on this, on the START program especially.
Yes.
Because some of that does come into our city. And we are going to lose some of the START program.
With respect to the LTAF funding, is that what you're, or?
Right.
Yes, we are currently, actually right now, meeting with Avondale as well as the rest of the cities with respect to the LTAF cuts and making those adjustments as needed. But we are definitely, Avondale's our partner in a lot of that LTAF money and the routes that run through the two cities.
This is all called the Avondale region. So,
right.
We better work with them.
Right. No, we are. And I know that Cato and I had a meeting with Avondale just last week, as well as with RPTA, other RPTA cities, and we're working through what those cuts mean to us and what the impact is to the city.
Yeah, because I've started attending the START meetings now, and I hadn't realized how much that's being cut tremendously.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other inquiries?
No?
I think it's really important is when you notify us on certain legislation that's going on that really affects our city, and that where we might be able to have some verbal or written input to make changes. And I know I've worked on a couple of bills with you down at the legislature.
Right, and I want to talk a little bit about that and
Okay.
the benefits and how you and I work together and see if we
Good.
can expand a little
Okay.
bit on that. Okay. So, like I said, that was kind of the first part. That's our basis for where we set our legislative agenda. But the second portion of this is really discussing exactly that. What are those opportunities, and how do I receive feedback more effectively from City Council in the situations like the solar bill? And Vice Mayor Lord was part of that whole discussion on the solar bill. You saw how some of that stuff comes very quickly, and it gets messy very fast, and then it can end just as quickly. I mean, I think that whole solar discussion was maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
And there are in some of those situations where there's not time to come in front of council like we're going to do later today with the Cubs bill because it just happens so quickly. And so I felt that after that was a perfect example of it was remiss of us to not be able to share with council everything that we entailed, and then all of a sudden, and then our successes as well at the end of that of what all happened. And so there's a couple of ways we can do that we currently have in our that are options. In the city council agenda, there's usually a placeholder that says legislative update under John's update. What I could do, and this is an option that we can discuss, what I could do is I could provide for the city manager an update that he could share with you during the council meetings, if that's something that you feel is necessary weekly or biweekly or however that works. Another option is if you don't want it necessarily to be in a council meeting unless it's a very important issue, but just a general update if you want emails coming from me through John discussing what's going on down at the legislature, that's another option that we could make sure that the things that are happening are being told to you as quickly as I can possibly get them to you. And then the third is a lot of the cities who have many items have started to do regular work sessions throughout the legislative session. That's an option. The work sessions are usually scheduled way ahead of time during session. They're kind of regular every biweekly, and then if the presentation is needed, it's used, and if it's not, it goes away. And so those are some of the easy ways that we could address the whole communication on the issues. If there's anything else, again, I'm open to all ideas. If there's, want to do one-on-ones more often, I'm just trying to be as creative as possible to make sure that we reach all of you on these issues.
Well, I'd like for us to have you come and do an update at a periodic, once a quarter or so, or maybe even more often than that. But I think we need to hear what's going on, and you're right there in the middle of it, and I think you need to come give us that information.
And I think it's very helpful when there's an urgency, that through the email, that you notify us and tell us what we can do, what avenues we need to pursue, and give us the information that we need, because I think it's really effective. And so much of your work is instantaneous. You just don't know what the change is going to be down there, and we found that out. So I agree with Frank. I think I'd like to see some updates, but I also would like to be contacted when there is a part that we can play in positive legislation for our city.
Myself, I think you've done a good job. I appreciate the quarterly one-on-ones and the email blasts when there's kind of urgency, like you said. I think that the placeholder would be a nice time to give some updates to the current issue with the ball, with the Cubs, things like that are really a hot topic. You've got it. It's a placeholder. Use it. I think that we would appreciate that, especially when we are practically getting together every other week. So I think that some of that would be nice. I think you're hitting everything else. You're sending us the emails. You're doing the one-on-ones. I think the placeholder would be probably something that we're not using.
Right.
And so just as even if it was a 2-minute, hey, this is just to bring everybody up to speed. This is what's going on.
And we do appreciate your tenacity and all the work and the hours you put in, because we know this has not been an easy year for sure.
No, it's been very difficult.
And you are greatly appreciated, so thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I think the
She's
timing
filling the
sometimes,
position well.
well, I think sometimes it's the timing when you have some of these things that are real critical. Those fired off those emails are very, very helpful. And again, I like the placeholder as well. Just kind of keep it prized, because there's a lot of I know working pieces out there, especially if the 1% doesn't pass. I know they have a contingency, and what is that contingency? How may that impact us? So it's kind of always nice to get those updates fresh in the mind where the status is on that. So a placeholder, I think, is a great thing. Whether it's when the manager updates us, but to tell you the truth, I read that thing that John sends out to us every week. As far as what's going on, and even if there's a little snippet in there, on hot button issues, we could pick it up as far as an update. Because I read that regularly, so just kind of keep us abreast of what's going on there. But I know it changes so fast, and sometimes just a quick burst when there's something urgent that you need some feedback on. It's like you've been doing, it's been fine.
Okay. That's great. That's all great feedback. Thank you. Okay, so let's continue on and move into the discussion that we've invited our illustrious new partner on. So the final portion is going to be specifically with respect to the Cubs Mesa Stadium funding. And I wanted to kind of split this discussion into two sections so that we can kind of flow through it. One, I'm going to provide for you guys a review of the events that has led up to today's bill, kind of what got us to where we are today. And then the second part is let me get some feedback and discuss some options that may be out there on next step and see where we're headed as a city on this issue. House Bill 2736 was introduced during the beginning of session, and its formal title is the Sports Authority Surcharge. And when it was introduced, it levied a car rental tax and a spring training ticket surcharge for the purpose of building the Mesa Spring Training Facility with any extra funds going to ASTA. Now, there were no amounts included in that initial bill. So what it meant was it was just language at that initial time. There's nothing money specific in there as in how much the taxes would be. As it went to Commerce Committee, it was amended. But before it got to Commerce Committee, we addressed that bill with Representative John McComish, who's also Majority Leader in the House. Brian Dahlke and I met with him early on in the process and expressed our concern of the entire bill and the entire process. We felt as if this bill should have had a stakeholder process. Cactus League City should have been at the table when discussing any kind of funding for any new stadium, as well as for ASTA. And at that point, the city had not taken a position because we had not known the impacts of this bill, as it was generally just a language at that point. We didn't know what the surcharge was going to be or how much the rental car tax was going to be. When it went to Commerce Committee, as you can see, it was amended to include the actual amounts of the taxes. So what was added in Commerce Committee was $1 on the rental car tax and an 8% spring training ticket surcharge, is what was amended in committee. Now, in committee, Major League Baseball, the commission had a representative, as well as 14 of the Cactus League teams also had a representative, and the car rental organizations also had representatives opposing pretty much the entire bill. The Major League opposing the surcharge and the car rentals organizations opposing the car rental tax. And so they took the lead, really, in Commerce Committee. The cities, obviously we were all there, but at that point in time we hadn't even met yet as cities. This happened within the first few weeks of session, so we hadn't even met yet as cities to figure out what our game plan was going to be or how we were going to address this issue. And so we didn't speak in committee, or we did not weigh in with any opposition at that point in time.
Do you think that was a disadvantage?
No, I think, in all honesty, if our opposition were stated that early on, it was an unfairness to us because we didn't even understand at this point what the impact was going to be. And so it was, in the two lead organizations, which is Major League Baseball and the car rental lobbyists and organizations, were really working very hard to make sure that the opposition was stated. And so I think it actually worked to our advantage better to take a step back, look at the bill, find out what the impacts are before we go out there charging. A committee is very early in the process, and so there was ample time after that to weigh in. The next step in the process was the caucuses. And as you guys know, I've gone through caucuses with you before, the meaning of a caucus. So each party gets together and they meet with their friends in a room, and staff gives them an update, and they kind of debate the issue and ask questions of maybe the sponsor. And so you've got Republican Majority Caucus that met shortly after that, and Representative McComish there, after receiving a lot of opposition from both the rental car organizations as well as Major League Baseball, made an announcement and said that he's working on an amendment that will remove the rental car tax, because there are a lot of legislators that felt that was a very unfair disadvantage to kind of pick on the small guy for this thing. And then increase the ticket surcharge from 8% to 10% to make up the difference. Needless to say, that wasn't.
City's not the goal.
What did you want?
We're not allowed to speak in caucus, so I didn't say anything.
I should be there.
She obviously rolled her eyes, though, I'm sure.
And so that announcement was made in caucus that was the direction of which they were going to be going. Now, no actual action can be taken in caucus other than the discussion, kind of like in work session. It's like a work session. You discuss it and it moves on. And so you can imagine the opposition that was then created from Major League Baseball with that kind of shift over completely 10% over to the ticket surcharge. At that point in time, the cities had ample time to be able to discuss what the impacts were to us, specifically to the bill and to our stadiums, as well as to ASTA. And so we started to meet as Cactus League cities along with representatives from some of the teams. And as a group, what we found was that ASTA has a lot of financial problems with the change in the economy. We looked at our projections, we looked at ASTA's new numbers, and as we all have seen, the economy's taken a toll on the projections. And so what we realize is this is a larger issue than just the Cubs and Mesa. This is really a Cactus League issue. And so that's when our discussion started to change direction. And we as cities decided that the message should be more about let's fund ASTA and let's work on the problems that we currently have with ASTA. And so a lot of the intergovs, as well as a lot of our contract lobbyists, went out and started speaking to members. And for me specifically, I broke it up into 3 specific items that I talked to members about that I want to make sure you guys understand. The first thing that every Cactus League city has been very clear in saying is that we all understand that the Cubs are an extremely important addition to the Cactus League. They are the draw. And we get that. Nobody's denying the ability for them to fill our stadiums. So that was really important that legislators understood that we are all willing to sit at a table at stakeholder meetings and be a part of a solution to find for the Cubs. And the second important point that I always wanted to bring across was that this current piece of legislation impacted our current city's general fund in the impact that in the event the surcharge was passed and the teams did not agree with that surcharge, there's 3 of us cities, which is Surprise, Peoria, and Goodyear, have contractual language that says in the event that happens, the impact then falls on us if the other side does not agree to that surcharge. Now, we all know the teams are not agreeing to that surcharge because they're out there opposing it. So that financial impact would have been on to us, which I think at the end of the day, if it was a 20-year surcharge, it's about $4.5 million coming out of our general fund to go to the city of Mesa. So that was that was a second important piece of that. And third was, I don't think legislators understood the financial situation that ASTA was in. And so we started to share those numbers, and we started to share what was happening with the deficit that they were running, and we helped them understand what their contractual obligations were to the cities currently that had worked the ASTA process. And so those were the 3 things that we targeted as we went out there and started talking to legislators. And it began to resonate. It began to resonate with the legislators that this is much larger than we thought it would be. We have 2 legislators, as you guys know, Steve Montenegro and Jerry Wires. I do have to note that both of them were very active as soon as they did find out the impacts. And like I said, they didn't understand the impacts until we brought it to their attention. And so once they did find out those impacts, they were both very active in trying to help us. Mr. Montenegro directly went and talked to the sponsor of the bill and expressed a lot of those concerns, and Mr. Wires did the same. And currently, Mr. Wires is still front and center on this issue and wanting to make sure that it's addressed effectively. And I know that's important to you guys to know that your legislators are working. So those were a couple of the ideas. Now, the reason I bring all this attention to you right after the caucus is because that's really when all of this started to happen. Well, that's when all these discussions happened, is right after that caucus meeting, when we realized they were shifting the burden to the surcharge. And so right before the committee of the whole, you can imagine that with that kind of pressure coming in from the cities and from Major League Baseball and, frankly, the commission, the Major League Baseball Commission, as well as from the media, there was a little bit of shift in the way that that Mr. McComish decided to handle this issue. And so he had made a last minute, I say it's last minute because I didn't hear about it until the day of, that they were shifting gears, and what he was going to do was he's going to amend the bill on the floor to remove the car rental tax officially, and then he was going to add language that would redirect the monies to pay the debt service for the Pima County facility, which has now been vacated. And the reason he did that is because he needed those Pima County legislators to participate in getting this bill passed. And then the third piece of it is he zeroed out the amount on the ticket surcharge, because after we had expressed all of our concerns that I listed just a minute ago, there were plenty of legislators who did not feel that they were ready to vote for something like this. So in order for this discussion to continue, he pretty much had to turn the bill into a shell bill, which is essentially what it is right now. We're back to square one. There's nothing in there. And so that's currently where we are with the bill. Now, the bill has moved over at third read, and so it's passed out of the House with 35 votes. And the only way those 35 votes, I believe, were there is because the bill was shelled and started over. And so he had enough votes to get that out. One thing that he did say, Mr. McComish did say during his floor speech, was that he will not move a bill forward that does not have all the stakeholders okay with the bill. I mean, essentially, that's going to be something that everyone's going to have to be okay with. When in the major stakeholders, you're talking about the cities, Major League Baseball, and the 14 Cactus League teams that are represented here. That's kind of how I see that. So currently, House Bill 2736 is in the control of Senate President Bob Burns, and he's assigned the bill to his Rules Committee. He chairs that committee. It's the only committee it's going to, which means essentially he's completely in charge of how this moves forward from here on out. So that's kind of the history and the story in a nutshell of how we got to where we are now. This is where we are now. The bill is sitting in the Senate. Just quickly, the importance of a couple of these key issues I just want to review so you understand where we are. Major League Baseball Commission is opposed to the ticket surcharge. We know that. And if you read the article yesterday in the paper, you know that this is a non-starter for Major League Baseball. So essentially the ticket surcharge is dead. Representative John McComish and the city of Mesa continue to stress the importance of finding the solution for the Cubs this year. They continue to say that this year is the year that this has to happen. We're not necessarily convinced that's true, but that's an issue that we have to contend with. And then the third piece is that ASTA's deficit needs to be addressed for the future of the entire Cactus League. This is larger than just Mesa and the Cubs. This is about ASTA and the future of the Cactus League. And then the final is any funding options that, my personal feelings are any funding options that we should address in this discussion needs to fund ASTA and then the Cubs Stadium. ASTA has current obligations it needs to meet. Those current obligations need to be met before we start taxing residents to build a new stadium. So that's a little side note. That's my opinion, of course.
Do you know how much money Mesa has put forward to retain the Cubs in their environs?
To retain the Cubs?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Like as in how many?
That is my objection to this whole thing. That if we, as a city, has funded a major portion to bring the Cleveland Indians and the Cincinnati Reds here, then Mesa should do the same thing.
Do we know how much Mesa is talking about putting forward?
I think the split, I want to say it was kind of the mid-80s $1 million was what they were talking about to fund that stadium construction. 60% of that was going to flow from state, these surcharges and rental car taxes. They were going to pay about 40% of that. What their split is, I don't know whether it was where their sources of money were coming from, but that was about the
Well,
split.
my concern is, that the Arizona Sports Authority is involved here with Goodyear to a substantial amount of money that they owe us. Now, if they get into a situation where they're going to pick up a major portion of Mesa's, then that cuts us out down the line. And that's my objection, that if there's any deal made, between the Cubs and Mesa and the Sports Authority, that before they get money, we're first in line because they've committed to us.
Right.
And they've committed to Glendale as well. So.
Yes, and there's actually a list of the current commitments that ASTA has made with other cities, and all of them, including renovations for many of the cities out there, because many of these cities have older stadiums and they're up for renovations in the next few years, and then Glendale, after that, Glendale has some payment, and then we have some payment, and then it goes on. So there is actually currently a program that states where all this money is and how it's going. And that was one of the main points that I made is these obligations are set. We've all already worked with ASTA, and we've put a priority list together, and we know how much we're going for and what years we're getting them. This absolutely disrupts
It does.
that list of obligations.
Well, and when it comes time for us to have some of that debt paid back by ASTA, we want the money to be in there.
That's right.
And so I agree with you on there needs to be some type of program set up that's going to increase the funds. At this time in our economy, I don't know what that's going to be, but I have apprehension of going along with Mesa because they have no property tax. Their citizens have not made the commitment that our citizens have made. And so to say, hey, go ahead, it really does bother me a great deal. Has it ever happened, and I don't know the baseball league, has it ever happened where the teams themselves have put the money forth and then the cities work out a payment system to them or something
Where
like
they
that? Where you
finance
they finance it and you reverse that?
I honestly don't know if across the country there's been a situation like
Right.
that. But I do know that the Major League Baseball Commission is very committed to finding a solution that's not going to impact the rest of the teams. I mean, that's why they really did oppose the surcharge, because there's never been, the precedent of taxing one team to help another is not something
Never
that they
been.
want to get into, and that's something that they would never be supportive of.
Except I thought I read something where somebody said, well, they have nothing to do with it. They have no jurisdiction over the cities and saying,
Well, actually, that was quoted yesterday in the paper where it said,
Yeah.
Technically, there's nothing, they don't win or lose by any of this, other than the commission, at the end of the day, does, I believe, have the power to not approve a contract between a city and a
Do
team.
they want that renovated, or they want a new
No,
stadium?
they want to build a new stadium.
Oh, jeez.
I've heard rumor that the possibility that it was built on a reservation somewhere had come up. Now, I don't know if that's still on the table or not, and I don't know if there would be some way of if that kept the Cubs in the state having on a reservation, but somehow the state worked with them that we received something for ASTA. I mean, maybe that would be the way it would work.
Then this is absolute rumor. I don't know. I've never seen any documents or anything
Mm-hmm.
that says that there was an offer from the Gila River Indian community. My understanding was there was an offer from the Gila River Indian community, but the Cubs owner is a new owner and is not interested in being located on an Indian reservation. And so, like I said, that's pure rumor. I don't know if that's actually a discussion that did happen, but that was not an accepted offer.
I see.
And doesn't the Mesa complex also have, the one I saw is supposed to have all this shopping and retail around it?
The Cubs ownership is actually talking about adding on their own dollar what they're calling Wrigleyville West. And so what you would have essentially is a new stadium, and then you would have an entire complex put together by the Cubs by the Cubs ownership that would essentially be Wrigleyville West. So yes, it would be an entire economic development area.
Yeah, and
around the
I guess I agree with the vice mayor. We're probably having to forego our city center for some time into the future and our library, whereas Mesa has a Taj Mahal brand-new courthouse, has a art center, and no property tax. So
yeah.
I kind of agree with you right there. We're foregoing, and our citizens are going to miss out and see Mesa get all the retail by their stadium that was part of our plan development.
Absolutely. So it's a lot of work ahead.
There is a lot of work ahead. Let me just go through quickly what the possible next steps can be. Really, there's two. There's two options at this point. We can start, the Senate President can decide to start stakeholder meetings in the Senate to find a solution this session. Essentially, I think the session is going to wrap up within 30 to 45 days. So unless some genius comes up with some sort of great plan that we can all get around, we're looking about 30 to 45 days to come up with this. And I've seen crazier things happen, as Jim and I have talked about. You just never know. 30 to 45 days at the legislature is a lifetime.
It seems to you that it's a lifetime.
Yes, it does. And so I think that we will start hearing about a lot of ideas that are coming out, a lot of things that are being floated around. The media is going to be covering any single option that's going to be thrown out there for deliberation. Nothing has truly been looked at. Nothing has really been looked at to the level where we know how much money it would bring in. We know, what kind of detail we'd need to do it, what the impacts are. We have not had any kind of discussion that would bring that much depth back to the legislature or to any of us, really. The second thing that could possibly happen is if it's not handled this session, a stakeholder process would be established so that we would have discussions over the interim as stakeholders and bring it back to the legislature for next session. I think what you'll hear from the East Valley and Mesa is that this has to happen this year or the Cubs are going to leave. I don't know that that's necessarily true. There's been some discussions about the Cubs saying that we don't have to make a decision this year. I think that they feel the importance of making a decision on behalf of the entire Cactus League is what's important. And so that hopefully that urgency, it doesn't exist anymore.
I don't think they want to go back to Florida.
I don't think Florida has any money right now either.
No, they don't have any money either. But the owners love it out here because they don't have to travel all over the state to go to their ball games, and Cubs aren't leaving, but I hope something does get worked out. And then we get the Boston Red Sox and the Yankees next.
Yeah, Romine, I think their biggest challenge financially, I agree with you, is the Cactus League, because you have a lot of cities like ourselves and Glendale, et cetera, that have upfronted all this money. The Sports Authority revenue stream is declining. The monies that we're looking at down the road are dropping, and if they don't work on the Cactus League itself and figure out how they're going to make that financially sound, I think they're just missing the boat overall. So to me, that's where the focus has to be,
It's a
not
major
individually, individual cities kicking in to pay for that. They got to look at the financial solvency of the league itself. So that's what I hope they put their focus on.
And that's really what the message has been from our city and from my discussions and Jim discussions. Peoria and Goodyear have partnered up in working with Jim, and so our message is really the same. We both have the same issues, Surprises in there as well, and Glendale has a team of their own working on this. And really that's exactly the message that the cities are sending is we need to address the financial solvency of the Cactus League, and we need to worry about those contracts that are currently there. But that doesn't mean that we're not willing to work on something that would keep the Cubs in Arizona. And I think that's the key to all of this.
I think the other important thing is, as the mayor has stated in his writings, obviously the first important thing is to keep the Cubs in Arizona, but the second thing is to keep it within the ASTA structure.
Sure.
Because what's happened is Mesa's gone around and tried to get something outside of the ASTA structure, and I think Jim's position has been we need to keep it within the ASTA structure. So.
That's right. And that's
That was why it was developed in the first
That's
place.
right.
So.
That's the discussion that we've been having with legislators. To circumvent the process, for this team at this point in time, or for this city at this point in time, really can affect what we do in the future. Sure. Because then any team can come forward at any point in time when their contract is over and say, well, I want a new stadium or I leave, and then they're going to go out and try to get a separate funding source outside of the ASTA structure to address that, which then in essence really destroys what we've created, to address these issues.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Romina, thank you very much. Jim, thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, very nice. Before we adjourn, you have anything for us tonight?
No, I don't, Ms. Mayor.
Ms. Mayor? That's fine. I go by that,
Vice
too.
Mayor.
Any requests from the council to the city manager or staff? Okay, with that, meeting's adjourned.